My name is Grace. I never thought I'd share this story with anyone, let alone the whole world. But sometimes the things that break us are the very things that teach us who we really are. Before I begin, if you're watching this, I'd really appreciate it if you could like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It means more than you know, and maybe, just maybe, someone out there will feel a little less alone. Now back to the story. When I was 8 years old, my world changed forever. My mom had been gone for a few years, and it was just me and my dad. We weren't perfect, but we were a team. He made pancakes on Sundays, helped me with my homework, and always tucked me in at night. I thought nothing could ever come between us. But then he met her, Linda. She was beautiful, confident, and always seemed to have the right thing to say. At first, I was excited. I wanted a family again. I wanted to see my dad happy. But it didn't take long for things to change. Linda moved in, and suddenly everything was different. My dad started spending less time with me. He missed my school plays, forgot about our Sunday pancakes, and stopped asking about my day. Linda didn't like the way I left my shoes by the door or how I laughed too loud at cartoons. She'd sigh and say, "She's just a child. She'll grow out of it." But her eyes always said something else. One night, I heard them arguing in the kitchen. I was supposed to be asleep, but their voices carried through the walls. "It's her or me," Linda said, her voice cold and sharp. "I can't live in a house where I'm not the priority." My dad didn't even hesitate. "I choose you," he said. Just like that. No questions, no second thoughts. The next morning, he told me I'd be going to live with my aunt for a while. "It's just until things settle down," he promised. But weeks turned into months, and months turned into years. He called less and less. Birthdays passed with only a card, sometimes not even that. I watched from a distance as he built a new life, a new wife, a new house, even a new daughter. I saw their smiling faces in holiday photos, their matching sweaters, their perfect family. I was a ghost in his world, a reminder of a life he'd left behind. I tried to move on. My aunt did her best, but I always felt like an outsider. I stopped talking about my dad. I stopped hoping he'd show up at my school or call on my birthday. I learned to keep my feelings to myself, to build walls around my heart. I told myself I didn't need him. But the truth was, I missed him every single day. Years went by. I graduated high school, got a job, and started college. I worked hard, determined to build a life that was mine and mine alone. I made friends, found mentors, and slowly started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could be happy without him. But then, 10 years after he chose Linda over me, I got a call that changed everything. It was a nurse from the hospital. "Your father is very sick," she said gently. "He's in kidney failure. We've tried everyone in his family, but no one is a match. You're his last hope." I felt the world tilt beneath me. I hadn't seen my dad in years. I didn't even know if he remembered my birthday anymore. But now, suddenly, I was the only one who could save his life. I drove to the hospital in a daze, my mind racing with memories, Sunday pancakes, bedtime stories, the sound of his laughter. I wondered if he'd even recognize me. I wondered if I'd recognize him. When I walked into his hospital room, I barely recognized the man lying in the bed. He looked smaller, older, his face lined with pain and regret. Linda was nowhere to be seen. The room was filled with the hum of machines and the sharp smell of antiseptic. My dad looked up, his eyes filling with tears when he saw me. "Grace," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I'm so sorry." I stood there frozen, 1,000 words caught in my throat. I wanted to scream, to cry, to ask him why he'd left me. But all I could do was stare at the man who had once been my whole world. The silence in the hospital room was heavy, filled with all the things we'd never said. I could see the fear in my father's eyes, but also something else. Hope. He tried to sit up, wincing in pain, and reached for my hand. For a moment, I let him hold it, feeling the roughness of his skin, the weakness in his grip. It was strange how someone who had once seemed so strong could now look so fragile. "I know I don't deserve your help," he said quietly. But you're the only one who can save me. The doctors said you're a perfect match. I pulled my hand away, my heart pounding. Where's Linda? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Where's your perfect family? He looked down, shame coloring his cheeks. They're gone. Linda left when things got hard. She said she couldn't handle the stress. My stepdaughter stopped visiting. I haven't heard from either of them in months. I wanted to feel vindicated, to throw his choices back in his face. But all I felt was emptiness. So now you need me, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. I know I failed you, Grace. I know I don't have the right to ask for anything. But I'm begging you, please. I sat down in the chair by his bed, my mind spinning. Part of me wanted to walk out, to let him feel the loneliness he'd given me for so many years. But another part of me, the part that still remembered, Sunday pancakes and bedtime stories, couldn't turn away. I stared at the wall, trying to make sense of the storm inside me. The doctors came in, explaining the risks and the process. They told me I was the only viable donor, that without a transplant my father wouldn't survive. I listened, numb, barely hearing their words. When they left, my father reached for me again. I'm sorry, he whispered. I wish I could go back and change everything. I wish I'd chosen you. I looked at him, searching his face for the man I used to know. Why did you do it? I asked. Why did you let her push me out of your life? He closed his eyes, his voice trembling. I was weak. I thought I needed her. I thought I could build a new life, but I was wrong. I lost everything that mattered. We sat in silence, the beeping of the machines the only sound. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to prove I was enough. All the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, wishing for a father who would choose me. Now, here he was, asking for the one thing only I could give. I told him I needed time to think. I left the hospital, walking through the city in a daze. The world felt too bright, too loud. I found myself at a park we used to visit when I was little. I sat on a bench, watching families play, and wondered what my life would have been like if he'd chosen differently. That night I called my aunt. She listened as I poured out everything. My anger, my confusion, my guilt. You don't owe him anything, she said gently. You have to do what's right for you. I barely slept. I kept seeing my father's face, hearing his voice, remembering the good times and the bad. I thought about forgiveness, about what it really meant. Was it letting go of the past? Or was it something more, choosing to be better, even when someone else hadn't been? The next morning, I went back to the hospital. My father looked up as I walked in, hope flickering in his eyes. I sat down, taking a deep breath. I'll do the tests, I said. But I haven't decided yet. He nodded, relief flooding his face. Thank you, Grace, thank you. The days that followed were a blur of blood tests, consultations, and paperwork. The doctors confirmed what we already knew. I was a perfect match. My father grew weaker, his skin pale and his eyes sunken. I visited every day, sometimes sitting in silence, sometimes talking about the past. He told me stories I'd never heard, about his childhood, about my mother, about the mistakes he'd made. For the first time in years, I felt like I was getting to know him again. But the pain was still there. Every time I looked at him, I remembered the little girl who'd waited by the window for a father who never came. I remembered birthdays spent alone, holidays with empty chairs, the ache of being forgotten. One evening, as I was leaving the hospital, a nurse stopped me in the hallway. You're a good daughter, she said softly. Not everyone would do what you're doing. I smiled, but inside I wasn't sure if it was true. Was I a good daughter? Or was I just someone who couldn't let go? The night before the surgery, I sat by my father's bed. He was asleep, his breathing shallow. I watched him, wondering if he dreamed about the life he'd left behind. I thought about the choice I had to make, whether to save him or to let him face the consequences of his choices. As the sun rose, I made my decision. The morning of the surgery, the hospital was quiet. I walked through the halls, my heart pounding, every step heavy with the weight of my decision. I thought about all the years I'd spent waiting for my father to come back, all the times I'd wished for his love, all the pain of being left behind. I thought about forgiveness, about what it really meant, not just for him, but for me. When I entered his room, he was awake, staring out the window at the gray sky. He turned when he heard me, his eyes red and tired. "Grace," he whispered, his voice barely more than a breath. "I don't deserve this. I know that. But I'm so grateful you're here." I sat beside him, taking his hand in mine. For a long moment, we just sat in silence, the years of distance and hurt hanging between us. Finally, I spoke. "I spent a long time hating you," I said quietly. "I spent even longer wishing you'd come back. But I realized something last night. I can't change the past. I can't make you the father I needed. But I can choose who I want to be." He squeezed my hand, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry, Grace, I'm so sorry." I nodded, feeling my own tears fall. "I know, and I forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean things go back to the way they were. It just means I'm letting go of the pain." The doctors came in, explaining the procedure one last time. My father looked at me, fear and hope mingling in his eyes. "Are you sure?" he asked. I took a deep breath. "I'm sure." They wheeled us into surgery, the bright lights blurring as I closed my eyes. I thought about my mother, about the little girl I used to be, about the woman I'd become. I thought about the power of choice, the choice to forgive, to heal, to move forward. When I woke up, the world was hazy. The nurse smiled at me, telling me the surgery had gone well. My father was recovering in the next room. I felt a strange sense of peace, a lightness I hadn't felt in years. A few days later, my father came to see me. He looked healthier, stronger, but there was still a sadness in his eyes. He sat beside my bed, holding my hand. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. "You saved my life." I looked at him, searching his face for the man I'd loved and lost. "I didn't do it for you," I said softly. "I did it for me. I needed to know that I could be better, that I could choose compassion over anger. I needed to know that I could let go." He nodded, understanding. "I hope one day you'll let me be a part of your life again." I smiled, a small, sad smile. "Maybe, but that's something you'll have to earn." He left the room and I lay back, staring at the ceiling. I thought about everything that had happened, the pain, the loss, the forgiveness. I realized that sometimes the hardest thing in the world is to let go of the hurt and choose to heal. A few weeks later, I got a letter from my father. He wrote about his recovery, about the changes he was making, about his hope to rebuild our relationship. He didn't ask for anything, just a chance to try. I wrote back, telling him I was open to the possibility, but that trust would take time. We started small, phone calls, letters, the occasional visit. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, moments when the old pain resurfaced. But slowly, we began to build something new. Not the family we'd lost, but something honest, something real. If you're watching this, I want you to know that forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of the past. It's about choosing to move forward, even when it hurts. And sometimes the greatest strength is found in letting go. Thank you for listening to my story. If you made it this far, please like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Maybe my story will help someone else find the courage to heal.